Roger Stone is the author, along with Robert Murrow, of The Clintons' War on Women. It's a stunning book. Roger Stone is a New York Times best-selling author. He is a longtime political insider and operative. I read one of his books on Nixon. It was absolutely brilliant. This book completely lifts the veil. I mean, uncovers the shocking truth about Bill and Hillary Clinton. This is the book the mainstream media doesn't want you to read. Joining us now is author Roger Stone. Roger, thank you so much for coming on the Cooner Report.
Thanks so much for having me here.
Roger, before I get into and it's an incredible book, and I want to congratulate you. It is brilliantly written. It's courageous. It's insightful. It's incredibly well documented. I believe this book needs to be read by patriotic Americans, especially now that it does appear that Hillary will be the Democratic nominee. Before I get into the book, Biden about 45 minutes ago announced he will not seek the Democratic presidential nomination. Roger, is this now a coronation for Hillary?
Well, not quite yet. Her negatives continue to climb. She's being pressed by Bernie Sanders. I mean, the guy says he's a democratic socialist. That's like calling yourself a meat-eating vegetarian. You either believe in democracy or you believe in socialism. They're not mutual. They're contradictory systems. The problem here always was that Joe Biden appeals to the same people Hillary did. All he would have done is split the union vote and the Democratic regular vote, but the energy in the Democratic Party is on the progressive left. Biden, frankly, I don't think he could have stopped Hillary. He might have taken a little wind out of her sails, and he might have improved the chances for Bernie Sanders. But one-on-one, despite the fact that Sanders is such a flawed candidate, I would still predict she loses the first two contests. What really happens today is this race remains wide open. She has a lock on nothing, just like the Republican nomination remains open. And I still believe that there is a candidate out there, I can't name them, but who could be enticed based on her weakness. Perhaps the senator from Massachusetts, who I still think could roll over Hillary if she chose to do so. Remember, most of these people in the Democratic primaries aren't left, they're far left.
Wow. I mean, so you think Elizabeth Warren, if she was to jump into the race, could clean Hillary's clock?
No question about it. The energy in this party is not on the left, as I say, and there's deep suspicion about Hillary's bona fides. She says she's going to take on Wall Street. Based on what? She's taken millions and millions and millions from Wall Street. The Clintons will say anything to get elected. They're not liberals. They believe in nothing. They're crony capitalists. They believe in power and lining their own pockets. That's about it. True ideologues in the Democratic Party, I think they're fed up with the Clintons too. Real progressives, they're fed up with the Clintons too because they get half a loaf. And nothing Hillary says can be believed. She's a congenital liar. She's proven that, whether it is being under sniper fire at Bosnia or being named after Sir Edmund Hillary or claiming that her grandparents were immigrants or how she found the Whitewater billing records after she said she didn't have them or this current fiasco regarding her emails. She's incapable of telling the truth.
The book, Clinton's War on Women, I have to say, really one of the most devastating books I've ever read. Roger, before I get into the details of the book, for the audience out there, what's the central theme of the book?
It's simply this, that the whole narrative of Hillary Clinton as a lifetime advocate for women and children is bogus. She's an advocate for women unless you're one of those many, many women who's unlucky enough to be a sexual assault victim of her husband. In those cases, you now become Hillary's target. And Bill is a serial rapist. It's not a pretty word. I know these are tough words, but it's factual. He has raped or sexually assaulted dozens of women. We name them in the book. And you know some of them, but there's many you don't know. You know about Juanita Broderick, and you probably know about Paula Jones, and you probably know about Kathy Willey, but you don't know about Eileen Wellstone or Helen Dowdy or Dorothy Kyle Browning and dozens of others. And what happens here is once Bill assaults you, First, Hillary denigrates you as a slut or a bimbo or trash, and then she, not her operative, she hires the heavy-handed private detectives, Jack Palladino, Anthony Pellicano, now in prison, Ivan Duda, to track you, to intimidate you, to use strong-arm tactics on you in order to silence you. Motive? She doesn't want any of these women getting in the way to their climb to power and wealth.
You mention in the book a 19-year-old woman, Eileen Wellstone, and that you said that was really Bill Clinton's first rape, or at least alleged rape. Can you describe that and talk about that to the audience?
Sure. I mean, Bill Clinton, to this day, continues to be claimed to be an Oxford graduate. In fact, he got an honorary degree from Oxford many, many years later. He was tossed out of Oxford. He was tossed out because he met Eileen Wellstone in a pub, and he savagely raped her. He also bit her, which is a reoccurring theme that I'll come back to. The State Department and Oxford both ultimately confirmed that he was bounced out of Oxford. Now, in his biography, he said he left Oxford, which has a 99% graduation rate, to go to Yale Law School. The problem with that is that there's a year in between him leaving Oxford and starting law school at Yale, and he could therefore have very easily finished his studies and gotten his degree. This is why I call him the Rhodes Scholar rapist, and it is the first known rape by Bill Clinton.
And then you say that, as you mentioned earlier, this. So she. Now, by the way, did you manage to speak with Eileen Wellstone?
Yes, she's now married. She no longer goes by the name Wellstone. She was not prepared to say anything new on the record, but what she did say was that the quotes that are attributed to her in Capitol Hill Blue, another publication in 1999, are accurate. She, like many of these women, is scared to death. They've all been threatened. And let's take the example of Kathleen Willey. Kathleen Willey is an active Democrat, an avid Clinton supporter, works in his campaign raising money to elect him president, works as a volunteer in the White House social office. She goes to Bill Clinton. Her family is having financial difficulties. She goes to Bill Clinton to ask for a paid job, and she's assaulted. She's groped. He tries to put his hands in her panties. He tries to rip her bra. He tries to fondle her. She flees, but that's the good news. After that, her home is broken into and ransacked. Her car windshield is smashed. Her pet cat, Thunderbolt, is murdered and left on her front doorstep. Her children are threatened. She gets late-night phone calls from a male voice saying, we know where your children go to school. This is all Jack Palladino. This is authorized and paid for by Hillary. In fact, Palladino bragged about it to a Los Angeles reporter. He says he saved Hillary's ass. His only disappointment is that he didn't charge her more. So, it is a true story of serial rape or serial sexual assault, intimidation, strong-arm tactics, cover-up, and of course it's all about greed and power.
Juanita Broaddrick.
Well,
can you get into
Juanita
that? So that's the most famous one that we know that he allegedly raped. So she resisted his advances when he was in Arkansas, and then he raped her?
He raped her repeatedly. He also, as he does with many of his victims, he bit her upper lip. He bit it almost through. If you go online and look this up, this is a classic technique of rapists because it's a disabling move, but it also is a not-so-subtle bid to keep your mouth shut. It's interesting that NBC, hardly a right-wing news organization, did an extensive interview with Juanita Broaddrick. You can go on YouTube right now and see it. Lisa Myers, who's a very incisive journalist, conducted it. But they sat on the interview, and they didn't air it until after the impeachment vote. Had they aired it beforehand, perhaps the outcome would have been different. Only 2 weeks ago, Hillary Clinton put out a video aimed at college girls who have been assaulted or raped, and she says, and I quote, "You deserve to be believed." Well, why don't we believe Juanita Broaddrick? Why don't we believe Kathy Willey? Why don't we believe Paula Jones? In the case of Paula Jones, Bill Clinton summoned her to a hotel room, exposed himself, demanded oral sex, put his hands all over her. She fled. Then he denied repeatedly he'd ever met her, he'd ever heard of her. The whole thing was a hoax. Ultimately, he had to admit under oath in the Monica Lewinsky investigation that not only had he met and assaulted Paula Jones, he then had to pay her $850,000 in a settlement. Why doesn't she deserve to be believed, Hillary? I mean, the list goes on and on.
Now, ultimately, what are the Clintons after? I mean, you have this man who's a sexual predator. Hillary is clearly his enabler. What is it that the Clintons want? What do they seek? What is this all about?
Power and money. She wants to get back in control of the White House. Bill Clinton told an associate of mine, a Democrat, someone at the highest level of his campaigns and Hillary's initial campaign, that if Hillary got elected, that he would be back in there and he would be pulling the strings. And then, of course, there's the question of wealth. They're in it for the money. Peter Schweitzer wrote an extraordinary book, Clinton Cash, about the enormous amount of skimming and theft going on at the so-called Clinton Foundation. The Clinton Foundation is not a charitable organization. It's a slush fund for grifters. And the reason that Hillary has destroyed her email is because those emails show the nexus between the State Department and the Clinton Foundation. And there's 4 dozen examples of this. If you had a major contract on her desk at State that needed her approval, then you merely made multi-million-dollar contributions either to the Clinton Foundation or you paid Bill or Hillary for a quote-unquote speech, $750,000 in some cases, $1.5 million for another. Those are very expensive words. And then you got what you wanted. This is bribery. And I have been, as you know, in the book, very critical of Chelsea Clinton. And people say to me, oh, why are you picking on a child? Why are you picking on a little girl? Folks, she's an adult. She's a co-conspirator. She is involved in the theft of money at the Clinton Foundation where she's legally responsible. She says she doesn't care about money, but she had a $3.5 million wedding. She lives in a $10.5 million condominium. Her wedding dress cost $29,000. The liquor bill for her wedding was $3,000, more than most people pay for their whole wedding.
Oh, my God.
So if the Clintons are really concerned about income inequality, like Hillary said she was in the debate, then maybe Hillary should take some of that $258 million she made last year, or the $350 her husband made, and give it to the poor. That's the best way I can see to equalize people's income.
You discuss in the book Hillary's strange relationship with Huma Abedin, Anthony Weiner's wife.
Yes.
Can you get into the nature of that relationship?
Sure. I prefer to call her Mrs. Carlos Danger. There's several things here that are troublesome. First of all, Huma Abedin is the first woman in the history of the U.S. government to be given a special waiver so that she could work full-time at the State Department, at the same time working for a lobbying company, Teneo, Clinton connected, that lobbies the State Department. At the same time, she's triple-dipping at the Clinton Foundation. Secondarily, her parents, very high up in the Muslim Brotherhood, her brother's still active in the Muslim Brotherhood. Huma is the one who went through and vetted with Cheryl Mills, another henchwoman for Hillary, the emails to determine which ones we can see and which ones needed to be hidden. That means that Huma has had access to all these classified documents. Frankly, I doubt her loyalty to the United States, and I wonder why, when she travels with Hillary, as we have proven, she stays in the same hotel room. Why do they stay together? The State Department spokesman said it has to do with a health condition that Hillary has. Well, if she has a health condition that serious, and she's running for president, we need to know it. So I find their relationship very, very strange.
Do you believe she poses, that Huma Abedin has been posing a national security risk to the United States?
How does someone with these kind of credentials and connections to the Muslim Brotherhood get a national security clearance? I think it's problematic, yes. Given her bona fides, that is a terrorist organization. There's no question about that. They don't have the best interests of the United States at hand, and her ties to it through blood are undeniable.
Roger, we're up against a break. Can you hang on for one more segment, my friend?
Be happy to.
This is riveting stuff. We are talking with Roger Stone. He is the author of a bombshell blockbuster book, The Clintons' War on Women, New York Times best-selling author, longtime political operative, Roger Stone. Believe me, he leaves no, pardon the pun, he leaves no stone unturned. 617-266-6868. If you want to ask any questions of Roger Stone, we'll be back with so much more. Don't touch that dial.